Is this thing on?
Welcome back, everyone. Another episode of the Summits Podcast. I'm Vince Todd.
I'm Daniel Abdallah.
And we are in Q4, October. Once again, we are Breast Cancer and Liver Cancer Awareness Month. It also happens to be the heart of football season, folks, and the NFL's crucial catch this month as well. We'll talk a little bit about that. The NFL football mention there, of course, is the segue into this episode's guest, Miss Stephanie Pemberton. Welcome to the Summits Podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure having you.
Yep.
Despite what I heard a few minutes ago, but we'll let that slide for now.
Vince
it's
is
an equal
finally-
opportunity podcast.
Finally outnumbered at the mic.
You know what? It all makes sense now.
Well,
I now know why you're wearing that hat.
Well, you're wearing black and gold today, too, so I think it's very appropriate.
Yeah. See, that's fine.
Touche.
If people haven't realized it, we both went to Purdue. He went to IU. I know, running joke. Vince likes to give me a hard time, so I had to give him back.
Just so you two are happy, I did reach out to the marketing guy at Purdue, Ethan, who you may know him, maybe not.
I don't know if I
Ethan
know
Braden.
him. Okay.
If not, we can certainly make that introduction. So to line up a visit and do some remote episodes up there.
There you go.
So stay tuned. Stay tuned, Boilermakers.
I assume
welcome.
you just happen to be absent as well, like I was.
No.
at the
Oh, no.
same-
I will have
You'll actually be there?
I will be there.
Okay. All
Put
right.
it that way.
Okay.
I have the guts to be there. I may be wearing candy stripes even, which will
that.
probably
Be an
put
enemy
a target
territory.
on my back, on the bodyguard. Well, folks, we are, again, joined by Stephanie, as I mentioned. Steph, why don't you provide our viewers and our listeners a little background on yourself?
Absolutely. Well, I went to Purdue, but no, kind of going back even years before that. I am born and raised here in Indiana. Grew up in southern Indiana, small town. I claim Columbus, Indiana, because most people don't know where Hartsville, Indiana is. But small town Indiana girl growing up, and grew up with four sisters, and decided when I was 13, 14, that I wanted to pursue a career in sports. I had kind of fallen in love with Colts football, and decided I wanted to pursue a career in sports. And so fast forward a few years and went to Purdue and kind of set my sights on that. And so got some internships and started down that path.
How many kids from your high school went to Purdue?
So fun fact, I was actually homeschooled.
Okay.
So all four of my sisters went to Purdue as well.
Really?
So
Okay.
yes.
Because I would imagine in that general greater Columbus, southern
Yes,
Indiana area.
much heavier IU.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, much. No, we were definitely, of just kind of our circle of friends and things like that, we were definitely in the minority.
Okay.
What led us to Purdue is actually my oldest sister. She is a veterinary ophthalmologist.
Oh, there you go.
So, and then once, with 5 kids, my parents were like, we'll provide the housing if all 5 go to Purdue. And, they had a liberal arts school and a communications major. So I decided I would pursue my sports dream there, and it actually, worked out. But no, I was definitely, most of the students that we see come through at the Colts with a sports marketing major, come from the Ball States, the IUs, not many from Purdue. But yeah, pursued that. That was my dream, and was able to get some internships and got an internship with Purdue Athletics and then with the Indiana Fever. And then that ultimately led to an internship with the Indianapolis Colts.
Okay.
And I actually started out in the community relations department, which is the arm of the organizations that is focused on all of our philanthropic giving, a lot of our nonprofit partnerships internships and things like that. And so that's kind of where I got my start in the NFL, and had the opportunity after my internship and after I finished up at Purdue to get offered a full-time position there. So I started out as a community relations assistant, and have just had the opportunity over the years to grow in the organization, and took on a marketing role about 8 years ago, and kind of pivoted from just focusing on community to focusing on a much broader array of our organization, including game day, all of our large tentpole events, things that we do, training camp up at Grand Park, and kickoff concert, and 5K runs, and then obviously game day. Yeah, it's been exciting and a lot of fun to live out my dream, but it's been interesting too, because, growing up in small town Indiana, and now being able to work for, the team that is the hometown team is been just a huge blessing and so much fun. Typically in sports, when you decide you want to go in sports, you got to know that, 9 times out of 10, or really I would say like 9.9 times out of 10, you're not going to end up in your hometown. And so it's been a lot of fun to be able to, raise a family here and, be surrounded by family throughout my whole journey in sports.
Yeah. Well said. I would agree with the 9.9 on that. That's very loudly rings true. We appreciate your guys' partnership. The Colts have been partners with the Heroes Foundation for several years, and I'd like to thank you for that, for sure.
Absolutely.
So you are now the Vice President of Marketing for the Colts. What is what's that look like today? I mean, we're now in season.
Yep.
Now, at the same time, this is a 12-month out of your job, obviously. What's it look like today, maybe versus a year ago, during the year that people are tired of talking about?
Yes. So fortunately, it looks a lot different, but there's also things that don't look different. And so we're kind of in this in-between year, I feel like, because COVID still exists, and we've still got restrictions and we've still got protocols that we're falling under, but yet we are able to have full stadiums and welcome our fans back. And so it's been really fun to have that sense of normalcy come back and to see Lucas Oil Stadium full again and to hear the roar of the crowd. I think our entire organization missed our fans so much last year, and it was really hard, to walk into Lucas Oil Stadium, and for the 10,000 fans that were there, I mean, they gave it their all, and we were one of the few teams that actually got to host fans at some point, but it just wasn't the same. And so it's been really fun to get back to kind of, the energy, the excitement. I mean, this is what sports is, right? And so this year has been challenging in its own right, because you are kind of living in this limbo of things are still changing and evolving every day. But we all feel extremely grateful to be able to have our fans back and be kind of down that path of a more normal environment.
Yeah, I was there Sunday, the Sunday of the first home game. I tend to run on emotion for better and worse. It was a great feeling. It was electric. The game didn't turn out the way we wanted it, but just before the game started, just being in that atmosphere again was awesome.
Yep.
I'm like, you used to start to take it for granted, if you go to game after game, and it just kind of, it is what it is, but there was something special about that moment that was like, oh God, this feels good.
Yes.
I wish I could feel this way every game, and it's not a discredit to anyone. There was something special about finally being back. Pat certainly helped with his monologue, if you will, before hitting the anvil. I think he went over his time limit, but it was perfect. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to being at more home games this season.
Yep.
Well, one of the other topics of conversation certainly is Breast Cancer Awareness Month here in the month of October. Stephanie, what is your cancer story?
So my cancer story, actually, I would say starts kind of several years ago with my role with the Colts when I was back working in community relations. We've had a longstanding partnership with the IU Simon Cancer Center for years. our COO is the president of their board, has been very involved over the years. And, between them and Riley and some of the other organizations in town, we've done a lot in this space. The NFL's Crucial Catch campaign has been around for years. And that was kind of under and continues to be under our community relations umbrella. And so for many years, that was an initiative and a campaign that I was spearheading, and I was leading the charge on all of that. And, I was planning visits to the Simon Cancer Center, to the infusion room, and taking our players and our cheerleaders and our mascot and walking the halls and bringing cheer and visiting with patients and hearing their stories. I was organizing the check presentations on the field. And then I got to be a big part of the Chuck Strong initiative when Coach Pagano was there, and help with the fundraising and the awareness and just the incredible movement, if you will, that started from Chuck Strong. And so, I look back now and am amazed by how all of that kind of led to February 2020. I guess it was December 2019, had found a lump, and decided I should probably get it checked out. And so, went to the doctor. They said, I don't think it's anything. You're not a candidate for, there's no family history. You're not really a candidate. You don't really fit the mold for this being anything serious, but, we should be proactive and check it out. So, fast forward a couple weeks, get a biopsy, and then it was February 11th, 2020. I was at work in my office, and they had told me it would be 3 to 5 days to get the biopsy results. And I had gone in, I think, on a Friday, and this was Monday or Tuesday. And the phone number came up on my phone. I'm like, man, that was quick. I'm kind of expecting it to be in the latter part of the week. And the nurse, says, is now an okay time? Do you have a few minutes? And in my head, I'm thinking, if this was nothing, would she be asking me that? And you're analyzing it. Yeah. And so I closed the door to my office, and she said, we got your biopsy results back, and we did find cancer. And it's a moment I'll never forget, but it was just like your whole world just kind of stops for a minute. And here I am at work, in the middle of a busy day, and the hardest part after that was she didn't really have a lot of answers other than, we found cancer. We don't know what kind it is. We don't know, how invasive it is. We don't know a lot right now, but we know that there's cancer. And so I ask her what the next steps would be, and it was going to be, well, we're going to put you in touch with a breast surgeon, and start the conversation, and then we're still waiting for additional tests to come back and to know more. And so I got off the phone with her, and I called my husband immediately, and, we both kind of just cried together, because what else do you do at that moment? And I said, can you meet me at home? Because I need to, get away from work and just kind of start to figure out, like, what's the plan? Yeah. I'm a type A personality. I like to have a plan. And I needed kind of to figure out what that plan was going to be. And so on my way home, I called my parents, and I just said, can you guys meet me over at our house? And here it is, like I said, middle of the work day, middle of the week. I wasn't specific. And so they said, sure. And we got home, and I sat him down on our couch, and I told him what was going on. I hadn't told him I had found a lump or anything, because, again, I didn't want to raise false alarms, and I didn't want to. I hadn't said anything to anybody other than my husband Keith. And so the third phone call I made was the Simon Cancer Center, because here over the years, especially through Chuck Strong, I had developed these relationships with and gotten to know some of the staff and the doctors down there, and I knew where I needed to be, and I knew that they were the next phone call. So so I called over to Amber Senseney over there, and told her what was going on. I said, I haven't told anyone but my husband and my parents, so obviously I need you to keep this confidential for now. But I need to, I need to figure out who I need to see there and all of that. So I started that journey and got connected with some of the best doctors in the country there at the Simon Cancer Center. One of the hardest parts initially was just the waiting game, because you're kind of waiting for, you want to get started. You want to have the plan. You want to know, how do I start attacking this thing? And we had to wait for all of these scans and additional testing, and so there were a few weeks of that before you could really even come up with the plan of attack and how you're going to attack it.
That's good for type A's, sitting around waiting for a couple weeks.
It was really, really hard. It was really hard because you just, like I said, you wanted to attack it. You wanted to get started. You wanted to have a plan. And I've heard that from a lot of folks now who have gone through a cancer journey, of the waiting game is so hard, and not just on the front end, but then as you go through and, there's testing or there's scans midway through and all of that. I mean, that's half the battle, and it's such a mental game too when it comes to that, because you're trying to continue to, live your life each day and focus on everything else that's going on, but it kind of weighs on the back of your mind, and so you lose sleep and have anxiety and all of that. So that was one of the things, I think, through my journey that I didn't realize of just how much of a mental battle it is, as much it is a physical battle.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
For me, when I would kind of put this timeline together, and kind of like the old school wall calendars for Christmas, and you'd each day you'd pick off a thing, and sometimes you'd like a piece of candy or whatever on there. Well, I kind of did the same thing with chemo treatments. When you're in the front end, you're looking at it, and you're like, holy crap, I got however many months to go.
Yeah, weeks and weeks.
But yeah, to your point, yeah, it's there's a very mental aspect as well as physical.
Yep.
What was when the results came back and that plan started to be put into place? What did that look like?
So I met with the surgeon, and she kind of laid out while they were still waiting for the results, full results to come back. She kind of laid out, here's all the different potential options. We might start with we might start with surgery. We might start with chemo, depending on your type. And, she had told me, she said, one type that it could be, and then we see more in younger patients, is triple negative breast cancer. Yeah. And at the time, I didn't know what that meant. But, what she said is that means, it's not going to be responsive to some of our traditional and more sort of tried and true therapies and hormone-based therapies. And so it means that we've got to be more aggressive with treatment, because it's a more aggressive type. It spreads faster, and it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't respond. So the prognosis is not always as good. I mean, there's breast cancers out there that, are in that 96, 98% survival rate. And I think triple negative, I mean, depending on what you Google and everything, I mean, it's significantly lower. I mean, I saw everything, from the 70s, to the 80s. And obviously that changes because they're continuing to learn more. But so, I'm hearing all of this and thinking, well, goodness, I hope it's not that. And then they call you and they say it's triple negative breast cancer. And so, next steps were, you need to see the oncologist next, the breast oncologist. So they connected me with Dr. Brian Schneider down at Simon Cancer Center, who's one of the top in the country with triple negative, because it is one of the lesser known types of breast cancer. There's just not as much research. There's just not as many doctors that have dealt with it, that have had patients that they've treated with it. And so he got, met with him ASAP, and he said, here's the plan. We're going to do, all these different scans, because what we need to figure out is it anywhere else? Because it is a faster spreading type of cancer. We need to kind of figure out if there's anything else going on, if it's spread anywhere else. And so we get all the scans, we go through all of that, and it comes back that, everything looked good. There was one nodule on my liver that they couldn't quite tell, but he said, I think we should charge ahead. It's not an area that it would be a risky area to biopsy. And even if there is something there, we would probably still go at it aggressively with chemo. So let's charge ahead. So the plan was 8 rounds of chemo every 2 weeks, so 16 weeks of chemo. And then after that, surgery. And then in the meantime, they wanted me to do genetic testing because there was no family history. There was nothing health-wise that kind of indicated why this happened.
Right.
And so, they explained that there's some genetic mutations that, if I had them, could at least help maybe answer the why. And so while I was going through chemo, I also was going through the genetic testing process and kind of waiting for those results to come in. By the way, COVID also hit. So
minor details.
Yeah, minor details. So, I think it was after my first treatment, I think our offices at the Colts closed down a week or two after my first treatment, and everyone was sent home. And at the time, we were thinking, we were going to be home for maybe a couple weeks while they figured this thing out and flattened the curve. And little did we know that, that was going to be the next 18 months of kind of the remote
Looking
thing.
back, do you think that was a somewhat of a positive thing for your personal situation?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I've had so many people to say, you were dealing with cancer and COVID at the same time. And I said, this is going to sound crazy, but for me, it was actually a blessing. If I was going to get cancer, to have it line up with COVID and when everything was shut down was actually kind of a blessing because everyone was kind of in lockdown mode. Right. And so we didn't feel as separated from everything else. And because, you have to kind of slow down your life when you're going through chemo, right? Like I was already going to have to be more careful and sanitizing things and, watching, going to the gas station and washing everything down as I'm, getting gas. And that was already going to be a part of my life, but suddenly it became a part of everyone's life.
Right. Yep.
And so if there was a time for me to get cancer, I really do believe it was a blessing to have it at that time because I was able to work from home the entire time, but everyone was working from home.
Right.
And so physically allowed me, going back to that type A, I tend to push myself pretty hard. And, there were days where I know I would have forced myself to go into the office and I shouldn't have been in the office, but I didn't have to make that choice. And that was really, it was like God knew that he needed to kind of protect me from myself and pushing myself. So, the Colts were amazing throughout the whole journey and gave me every bit of flexibility that I needed. But I was able to work, through the whole journey and through chemo with some days off here and there and some naps here and there in the afternoon and things like that when I was wiped out. But absolutely, I mean, it was a blessing for sure to kind of be home and have that additional time with my family too.
Yeah, 100%. And let's not knock afternoon naps. I mean, I'm a proponent. I don't get to do it very often, but it sounds fantastic.
Yes. I've always appreciated a good afternoon nap.
What patient advice would you give to others who find themselves in the same battle right now?
I think give yourself grace and don't be too hard on yourself. I think it's hard sometimes in the moment because you are so worried about what's coming next. What are those next round of scans going to look like? You're staying in the moment and fighting the battle in the moment and taking it one day at a time is really hard. But if you don't do that, and if you get too far ahead of yourself, then you're not going to make sure that your body is fueled for the battle at hand.
Yeah.
And Dr. Schneider really helped me stay in the moment and not to worry too much about the what ifs. And kind of said, you know what, we're going to cross that bridge when we come to it. But we're not going to get too far ahead of it, because this is, cancer is, as much as they know now that they didn't know years ago, there's still so many unknowns, and every human body is so different. And so they, managing kind of the expectations and the, what's going to happen next. I think making sure that you're extending grace to yourself and giving yourself the space to be in the moment, to focus on the moment, and to make sure that mentally you are, that you're not just focusing on the physical, but you're also focusing on the mental side of it. So it was my second, the first 4 rounds of chemo were what they call the red devil, one of the most potent types of cancer. Or of chemo. Yeah. And
sounds enticing. Sounds like a great Friday night drink. I'll have 2 Red Devils, please.
Let me tell you, to this day, cannot drink red Gatorade, or it's like this association. But yeah, the nurse kindly shared that that's the nickname for it as she was administering the first dose.
Do you recall the actual name of the medicine?
AC was the short term.
Okay,
I can't remember
So one of the cocktails, there were 4, and one of them was red, and I would describe it as the same, but I don't think it's quite. It's maybe a derivative of that now. That was a few years ago.
Yeah, I don't know because it was the only colored chemo that I got, but it was kind of this big red shirt. I mean, the nurses literally put double robes and double gloves on when they gave it to you, if that tells you anything.
And you're sitting there and you're like, so you're doing that and you're getting ready to put that in. That sounds fantastic. I'll have more, please.
Exactly. So
I'm gonna do this for 4 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to do this for 4 rounds. But my second time in getting that, we had gone through all the pre-drugs and anti-nausea and everything, and so she was, came out and had her practically a hazmat suit on, and it starts, kind of, because they don't even do a drip. It's kind of a manual because they have to time it out. Okay. So she's standing there with this big red syringe and starting to kind of slowly put it into the IV, and all of a sudden, my chest starts burning and my heart starts racing. And I was like, I think something's wrong. And I mean, I'd already had it once. So, having an allergic reaction would have been an odd thing. And so she immediately stops. They're getting ready to, get the sort of the medicine that if you do have an allergic reaction to kind of stop it in its tracks. And so they're testing my vitals. And I mean, my chest is just on fire. I've never felt like this before. And, they check everything. Everything's good. Vitals are all good, everything. And so they call my doctor, and they came back to me and they're like, we're not questioning that you have these symptoms, but have you ever had an anxiety attack? And I was like, not that I ever know of. I don't. And that's what it was. They gave me something to calm my nerves and I was fine. But that was the moment where it really hit home to me that this is going to be a big mental battle, because your body and your mind does things and plays tricks on you. I remember the other thing I learned about was anticipatory nauseousness, where, you wake up the morning of chemo and you get in the car to drive down, and all of a sudden you feel like you just got hit with the flu or something, and you feel miserable. And again, didn't know that existed, didn't know what it was, but it's a real thing. And again, I think it just reinforces it is as sometimes as much of a mental battle, because your mind will kind of play tricks on you because it knows what's coming, or what you're about to go through.
Yeah. Were you in an infusion room with others, or do you have a separate room?
It was a mix. So they it was kind of whatever was available. Sure. And with COVID, they were doing every other pod too. So it was a little more separated, and they were being extremely, extremely careful. And I mean, the staff down there was incredible, just keeping us all safe during that time. But yeah, it was kind of a mix. There was, I think, one treatment that I got the private room, but in general, you were kind of in that more open area. But they had really kind of separated it off because they were trying to keep everybody separate.
Yeah. First 3 or 4 treatments, I was in the room with 30 others, 30 of my closest friends.
Yeah.
And that's when I just decided to puke all over myself and look up, and everyone's kind of like, "Yep, hey, what's up?"
Yep.
Yeah.
The other thing too.
From then on out, that's when they gave the anti-nausea, the anti-anxiety, and whatever else. And I was
Everything
basically
else that
out
wanted
the
Yep.
whole treatment, which was awesome.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that again, drugs, and they've come so far with kind of being able to, I actually, nurse told me a story. One of the nurses that had been there for a while, she said, years ago before the anti-nausea medicine and all that was what it was, she said, she actually had a patient that, it was like a year after her treatment was over or whatever, randomly saw her in the grocery store, and she actually threw up.
Oh, wow.
Just at the sight of seeing the nurse that gave her. I mean, that's, again, it sounds crazy, but I guess the human mind is really
It's
a
not
crazy
you,
thing.
it's me.
Exactly. It's like, this is never going to go. No, I mean, like I said, I can't drink red Gatorade for maybe forever because
Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah.
it's such a mental association now. But yeah.
Glad we didn't have red Gatorade. as
Yeah,
our-
seriously.
as our-
Stick with
kidding.
as
water.
a refresh. Yeah,
I was
water,
like
yeah.
a picture of hurricanes, but
Well, even the I don't know if you had to do this, but the first type of chemo I had is the kind where they have you put ice in your mouth
Yeah.
to try to prevent the
Mouth
mouth
sores.
sores.
Yeah.
And so I started off with the ice. They have this specific kind of ice at Simon Cancer Center, and it's kind of that aerated ice, right? And so a very specific texture.
yeah.
Pre-chemo, I was like, this ice is amazing. I love this ice. I want this ice at my house.
Right.
And now, don't ever give me that
Yeah.
ice again.
Yeah.
In fact, by the end, I was having to do popsicles and try everything else because I
Right.
couldn't put the ice in my mouth without a gag reflex.
Yeah. Sounds familiar.
So
Where are we? So where are we now? How far out are we from the last treatment?
So I had my last chemo early June of 2020, and then I had surgery in July of 2020.
Okay.
So through the genetic testing, found out that I had BRCA1. And so while that was not necessarily the best news, I guess the silver lining was it at least gave them information to understand probably why this had happened, and allowed them to offer a better recommendation for surgery and for next steps moving forward, kind of for my overall health. And then, oh, by the way, I have 4 sisters and a mother who could also potentially have BRCA1.
Right.
And so it allowed them to all be proactive and be able to go get tested and then make decisions based on those results that came in. So, that was kind of the news that I got along the way as I was going through chemo, but it helped guide kind of the decision around surgery, and we were more aggressive with surgery because of the heightened risk given BRCA1 for any kind of return or anything like that. And so the good news is by so when they went in to do the double mastectomy, they came back and they obviously do the look at all the cells and see if there's any cancer left. And so I got a call, I think 2 days after surgery from my breast surgeon, and she said there was no cancer left when we went in and got everything out. And that was kind of the best case scenario that we could have asked for. I found out after the fact, because again, I think Dr. Schneider was kind of protecting me from, but I found out after the fact that only about 30% of triple negative have a complete, what they call a complete response, NED, no evidence of disease, when they go in and do surgery. But by having that, my risk of reoccurrence dropped from like 50% down to, less than 10%, and that continues to go down year after year. So I'm a year out now. 2 to 3 years is kind of that key timeline for when it's going to then drop back down and be more in line with kind of, your average everyday female that's walking around, kind of thing. So I think under 5% potentially. So that was, the best news I could have asked for. So now I'm, seeing my oncologist every 3 months, just kind of for a check-in. And, one of the challenges is there's no blood work or anything necessarily that has a marker for triple negative right now, at least not that they know of. And so there's no blood work or anything like that. It's really just kind of doing physicals and making sure that, we're checking and that there's no other lumps that pop up or anything like that. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now. So I feel extremely blessed to, have kind of had that outcome and that result, and now be able to feel, healthy and kind of back to normal.
So we're roughly a year out.
Yep.
At this point, and you kind of just touched on this briefly, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. What, being a year out, your mind has gone a lot of different places over the last, call it, year and a half to 2 years. How would you say this experience has shaped your outlook, just in general?
Yeah, that's a good question. And here's what I will say is, I think it's changed it, but I think it's not done changing it.
Sure.
Because I think when you go through something like that, as you know, I mean, your mindset, like, I think it's going to continue to impact my life for years to come. Like, I don't know that there's this moment in time that says, oh, I went from this mindset to this mindset, and now this is going to be my mindset for the rest of my life. But what I will say is that, I have really tried to take a step back and make sure that I'm not taking things for granted in life, right? And really trying to be focused on the right things and make sure that my priorities, which I think is what you hear from anyone that's gone through this, right? Like, I don't think it's uncommon, but I think making sure that, I'm focusing on what matters in life. And being in sports, being in the NFL, it's a demanding career. It's a demanding job. And, I think one of the things that I got to do last year, being at home, working at home, is, I got to be there for a lot of things that in a normal environment I wouldn't have been able to be there for my kids. And that really made me stop and think, you know what, at the end of the day, I'm never going to regret missing a meeting, but I am going to regret missing a kid's field trip or a kindergarten graduation or things like that. Yeah. And so one of the things I've really tried to do, and the Colts are so supportive and a great family environment, is just make sure that I'm planning and being intentional about finding that balance and making sure that, I'm there for those moments that really matter, and figuring out how I need to get the work done on the back end, whether that's, a couple late nights or whatever, but trying to really make sure that, my priorities are in line with what they should be, because, our families, they're there through the thick and the thin, through, and my kids and my husband were so incredibly strong during the whole thing. And I think it really helped me kind of appreciate them, even more. So when you're forced to kind of think about the what ifs, it just resets your framework. And I think the other thing is, I want to use my story however I can to help others, to help other women, other younger women that, cancer isn't necessarily even on their radar. And if I can be an encouragement or offer advice or just, someone to talk to. Because again, I think until you've been through it, I remember going into the cancer and the infusion centers, when we were doing community work and things like that with the Colts. And I felt like I never knew what to say, because it's like, I have no idea what you're going through. Yeah. And so now, it's now that I have that a part of my story, like I feel like I can interact and encourage people in a way that's completely different than before, because there's these shared emotions and shared journeys that you kind of go on and these similarities and overlaps, and you talk about the type of chemo and, you know, how you got through this and this, and, you know, all that kind of stuff, that again, those, you know, before just couldn't really relate to.
Right. Yeah. You said your husband's name is Keith?
Yep.
So Keith, kudos to you, buddy. Great job being a caretaker for this young lady. That's obviously gone well. So good work for pulling double duty, taking care of her and the kids. I think that the flexibility of the work environment due to COVID, I mean, it was kind of already there with technology, but it hadn't been fully embraced, and it was kind of forced on us all. I know as an employer, we're changing a lot of things. We're testing a lot of things out, like a lot of people, and seeing if it'll work or not. You and I can attest to this. We'll see emails from each other at either 5 a.m. or midnight or whatever people think we're whacked. And, well, they're not wrong, but it happens. So, again, another potential positive, and I think what you mentioned about your Outlook is, look, go to the kids' game. Email will still be waiting on you.
Yep.
You can address it on your phone later or a laptop or what have you. The ability to still get the work done is there.
Yeah.
It's not the old school methodology that, you know, maybe some of our parents had. And I think, for better or worse, we're almost trained now to attack some of those. And some people are better. I'm not very good at it. I almost never stop working, which is a problem. But just to know that you have the ability to do that, and then a lot better allows you to put those other things in perspective. That's good.
Yep.
Your attitude through, or at least what I'm hearing in your attitude going through the process is now, as well, your outlook afterwards, I think is commendable. That type A-ness has probably been a benefit. So keep doing that. We appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story with us and with everybody else. If there's anything else we can do to help support you, please let us know.
I appreciate you guys having me on and giving me an opportunity. Like I said, I think I know when I was going through it, you know, hearing and connecting with other women that had gone through something similar, and just having kind of that sense of camaraderie was so encouraging and helpful, and gave you a sense of kind of community. And my husband was amazing throughout it, but it was also hard because he felt like he couldn't understand and relate to kind of what I was feeling and what my body was feeling, what I was going through. And so those were the kind of things where having those additional folks that I could connect with and talk with and you know, sort of get, how did this work for you? And what reactions did you have? And how did you kind of combat this or whatnot, was really, really helpful. And so I think all of us that have gone through that type of a journey now, I feel like it's part of our responsibility to continue to pay it forward.
Sure.
Because there were so many people while I was going through my journey that were willing to share their story, to share advice, to be an open book too, right? Because these are all very personal stories. I mean, I've never even had a broken bone before I had cancer. So like health and talking about my health and all, I mean, it wasn't something I was comfortable with. It wasn't something that I'd ever done. And it's really, you know, challenged me to be a little more vulnerable in that space.
Yeah.
So
good. Well, thanks again for coming on. We appreciate your time and your story. Folks, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you listening and watching this episode. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you can be alerted when this episode, or new episodes, I should say, drop, because you're already watching this episode. That was a dumb comment. Beat cancer and go Colts.
Go Colts.